Playing the wrong tune in the wrong key. Gig nightmares for you and me. Song changed keys and I wasn't ready. Gig nightmares for you and me. Another key change, oh God, oh no. Gig nightmares for you and me.
Yeah, Maria was a cool place to grow up back then.
I mean, the stories always sound fun.
Yep. Yeah, we had fun. That we did. And you know, and you found ways to have fun back then. There was no internet. You know, the only entertainment we had was, some of us had like an Atari or a television or something. Like, not even everybody had one. Like, nowadays, it's like everybody has everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has everybody has a video camera right here. When I was a kid, my dad was the only person I knew had a video camera. And he got the video camera, and he used to put the big VHS tapes, he'd put it right into the machine and record. And he bought it because my brother was playing basketball and football. And my dad wanted to record his games and then, be able to watch them and, critique them and shit. My dad was really into sports. And that's why he bought that. But we were the only people I even knew that even had a fucking video camera machine, because people used to ask my dad, can you come tape my kid's game or whatever? I'll pay you, because nobody fucking had it. Now everybody has. You can videotape whatever you want.
Yep. And I think there's the positives and the negatives of that. Positives, I like that technology has gotten to the point where I can just do a podcast so easily like this. Mm-hmm. But obviously, I can definitely agree with saying there's maybe too many options of what to do right now. Whereas back then, okay, well, you only have one thing to do. Okay, well, you can focus on that and then get really good at it. And that's why there's so many great guitar players and whatever. But well, now you have so many different things. Okay, you can play guitar, you can play video games, you can do whatever else.
Yeah.
So now people, maybe they don't really know as much what to focus on. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a double-edged sword on that sort of thing.
It is. Technology is definitely a double-edged sword, without a doubt. Because if you just look at the internet, and there's a lot of good positives to that, because it's a great way to promote your band for free. It doesn't cost anything. You can but it's also the worst thing that ever happened to music, because that's how people started getting music for free on the internet, and it just became, what's the word I'm looking for?
Well, music lost so much of its value.
Yeah, it became sterile. It used to be important. Because if I wanted, when I was a kid, if I wanted the new Rat album, I either had to get the money from my parents, or I had to go get a job and go work at McDonald's or whatever, and come up with the money to buy that album.
Yeah.
And then you took it home and you opened it up and you read the inside and who produced it and who wrote what songs, and a lot of times the lyrics were in there, and it was just where they recorded it at.
So how do you feel, because I'm sure it must have happened at least once or twice, where you would work so hard to buy a new album, you get that album, you listen to it, and it's terrible. Because personally, I'd be pissed off.
I don't know if that ever happened, and I'll tell you why it probably didn't happen, because I can't even think of a single example. I think the reason why it never happened was the fact that it was so important that you didn't take a lot of risks. Usually if I bought a new album, I already heard a song from it, so I already knew I liked that song. So I don't think I ever bought an album that I was disappointed in at that time.
So do you remember what your first show was? Because you've been playing for a while now.
The first time we ever played publicly was in my parents' backyard for my sister's 9th birthday. That was the first gig we ever did. We had a pool in our backyard. There was a deck on the pool, and we set up on the deck. My sister's birthday is May 9th. So I don't remember if we played on her birthday or was it just that weekend or whatever. But it was me and Leon Karpovich was the bass player, and Don Miller, who grew up on the lower road down here. Mm-hmm. He was the drummer for the first couple times we played live. But then, we were young though. I was in 9th grade maybe, and Leon was probably in 7th grade. And Don and I were Don was in 9th grade also. At that point though, Don was really getting into high school football. That was becoming his thing. I think he played drums for fun, but I don't think he was ever as serious about it as Leon and I were. And, going into high school, because I started playing in 8th grade. I got my first guitar. It was Christmas when I was in 8th grade. and I started taking lessons. January 6th was my first lesson. So I got my guitar on Christmas Day, and I had to wait till January 6th to actually learn how to play anything, because there was no internet. You couldn't just go on there and try and learn something.
Yeah.
You had to wait. And I used to open it up every day and just look at it. It was a BC Rich Warlock. I still have it. And I was anxiously awaiting Monday, January 6th for my first lesson. But yeah, so Don got into high school football, and Leon and I at that point replaced him with a guy named Carl Croft. Mostly people call him Cha. He was from Tamaqua, and he was 2 years older than me. So Cha was, at that point, Cha was a senior. I was in 10th grade, and Leon was in 8th. And that was now the band that became State of Shock. And we played as a three-piece for a little bit until when I was in 12th grade, I met Chris Shadle from Shenandoah, who I met him at Votech first day of school. And I had a necklace around my neck with a guitar pick on it, and he saw my pick and he pointed at it and said, "Hey, cool necklace," or whatever. We started talking. I said, "Do you play?" He's like, "Yeah." And we became friends immediately. And at that point, we didn't know if we were looking for another guitarist or if we were looking for a singer.
Yeah.
Because all along, I never wanted to be a singer. I just wanted to be a guitar player. And I always figured I'd sing backup, but I never wanted to be a lead singer. Had no desire at all to be a lead singer. But, as Kiss was my favorite band, all four guys in that band sang. And I knew that I wanted to contribute to the vocals in my band, but not necessarily be the lead singer. And there's two reasons why I started singing. Because at 13, when I started playing, and 14, when I started forming my first band, when you're that age and you get up and sing in front of your friends, they can't wait to make fun of you. And I didn't care. I didn't care who made fun of me. My band needed someone to sing just so we can practice these songs and know where we're at.
Sure.
So I didn't care if anyone made fun of me. So that was the first part. I didn't care. I didn't give a shit. The other reason why I sang was because I could sing and play at the same time. I wasn't very good at either, but I could do them at the same time. So since I could sing and play at the same time, and I wasn't afraid to sing, and I wasn't afraid to be made fun of, I became the singer in my band. Temporarily, in my mind. Because we always figured, well, we would look for a singer. And as we're going through high school, we auditioned quite a few different guys who were singers. And they came in, and the guys in my band were like, "You're better than him. You're better than him. Let's keep looking. You're better than him." And I wasn't even that good. And I was told I wasn't that good back when I was in 8th, 9th grade. People would see us jamming, in the garage or whatever, and they would be like, "Hey man, you guys sound really good, but you need a singer." Like, "Yeah, I know. I know. We're looking for a singer. Do you know any?" And that's kind of how it was. But the more I did it, the better I got at it. And eventually the band said to me, "Eric, are we still looking for a singer? Because you're starting to sound pretty good." And at that point, I was like, "Okay, well, I'm fine with it." And I said, "Well, you know what? If we find a really great singer, then I'll play guitar and sing backup. And if we find a really great guitar player, we'll bring him into the band, and I'll be the lead singer." And then when I met Chris Shadle that first day of school, my junior year of high school, it was his senior year, and Chris and I hit it off. And I said, "You want to come jam with us sometime?" And he said, "Yeah." And he came over and jammed with us, and he was really good. And he was a different style. He played more like you. He was more of a shredder, because I wasn't a shredder. I was, my favorite guitar players when I was a kid were Ace Frehley, Mick Mars, Michael Kelly Smith from Britney Fox is one of my favorite guitar players. I loved Elliot Easton from the Cars. I loved Tom Scholz from Boston. I loved Joe Perry from Aerosmith. So, my favorite guitar player is Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple, who's a little bit of a shredder. He kind of tinkers in shredding, but those were the guys that I wanted to play like. And as much as I loved Eddie Van Halen and the guys that came after that, I love Vito Bratta, one of my favorite guitar players. He's amazing. And Vito, if you're out there and you want to put a band together, give me a call. I can sing the hell out of that White Lion stuff. But anyway, I love Vito Bratta. I love George Lynch. I love Warren DeMartini. I love those guys, but it was never my desire to play like that. I wanted to play more like Ace Frehley. And later, when I discovered Stevie Ray Vaughan, he became, probably, I'm comfortable with saying he's my favorite guitar player because I just love Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Sure.
But Chris was a shredder. So he came in with a different style. He came in and he was playing Randy Rhoads licks. He was playing Eddie Van Halen licks. He was playing Warren DeMartini and George Lynch type stuff. And he was only 18, 19 years old, and he was incredible for his age. Incredible for any guitar player, but for his age, it was ridiculous. And so we jammed for a little bit. You couldn't help but notice what a shredder he was. And he's a cool guy, too. So he went to take a piss, and we all looked at each other and said, man, we need to get him in the band. Should we ask him? Yeah, let's ask him. So he comes back in from pissing, and I said, Chris, we were just talking. I said, what do you think about joining the band? And he goes, I think.
You think?
That's what he said. I'll never forget it. So from that point on, we were a 4-piece band. Chris was in the band. And he and I used to share leads. And it was a lot of fun for me because, I was probably 17. He was 18 or 19. And when we did a Kiss song or something like that, I would play the lead. And when we played songs like Wait by White Lion, Chris played the lead. When we played Crazy Train, Chris played the lead because they're the shredding songs. So he played the shredder stuff, I played the bluesier stuff, and it was a lot of fun for quite a while. And we wrote some great songs, man. The very first song that Chris and I ever wrote together ended up on our first album. It's a song called Nobody Rides, and it's still one of the most popular songs. When people who were into the band back then or have discovered or rediscovered the band recently, Nobody Rides is definitely one of our most popular songs, and that was the very first song he and I ever wrote together.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And then there's like the song placements in movies the past few years.
Yes, that song is in one of them. I tell you, we did 2 albums with State of Shock, and I think almost every song has been in a movie from both those records at this point. I have to sit down and map it out. But
yeah.
We've got music in about a dozen movies right now, and Nobody Rides was in a movie called I Hear the Trees Whispering. And the second song me and Chris wrote together was a song called Shot Down. That was the second song. That was in a movie that's coming out called Tales from the Dead Zone with Corey Feldman and Bret the Hitman Hart are in that movie. And our song Shot Down is in that movie. Shot Down was in a movie called Craving, which starred Felissa Rose, who was famous for her role as Angela in the Sleepaway Camp movie. And I think there's another one that Shot Down is in. But yeah. Anyway,
so
being
that the show is called Gig Nightmares, do you remember, from your time playing with State of Shock, do you remember any gigs that just didn't go right or anything like that?
Not with State of Shock. We didn't do a lot of shows because we were just teenagers.
Yeah.
And we mostly were just doing there was a couple of bars that we used to play at, and we used to play them pretty regularly throughout the year. And we did Roller Roost used to get bands all the time at the roller rink. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We played there. So we didn't do a lot of shows in the early days with the band. But speaking of Gig Nightmares, I think the one that comes to mind right away, when I was in Cold Gin, Kiss tribute band, we were playing at a place called CC's in Music, Pennsylvania. And it was snowing out. And it was icy. And Music's about an hour north of here. And I remember thinking, oh my God, the weather's horrible. I don't know if anybody's going to come out to this show. And as I'm driving up to Music, it comes on the radio that the governor of PA, I don't remember exactly, but somebody had declared there was a state of emergency and that all vehicles should stay parked. And we were playing at CC's, and it wasn't canceled. Because, in the Kiss tribute band, we didn't even all live in the same state. Kevin was living in Virginia, and and I was in PA, and I don't remember who else was in the band at the time, but, we traveled from all over to do these shows, and we played the show in Music, and actually our drummer at the time was Mike Sevo from New York City. And because I remember he painted his face like Alice Cooper that night because we decided nobody's going to come see us, but we're going to play anyway. And Kevin's like, there's no fucking way I'm putting that makeup on. I'm not doing it. If you guys want to play, let's play, but I'm not putting the makeup on. And we were all like, you know what? You're right. Why put the makeup on? Nobody's going to be here. And we decided we'll still play without the makeup and costumes. And Mike ended up going to the dressing room and painting the Alice Cooper makeup on his eyes because he kind of looked like he actually looked more like Steve Stevens from Billy Idol's band.
All right.
But when he put the Alice Cooper makeup on, he did look great. So we did a Kiss show with no makeup except we had Alice Cooper on drums, and that was kind of a nightmare because nobody showed up. There was 12 people there or something. But and then another nightmare involving the same place that just comes to mind. But a different occasion. We were playing 3 nights in a row. The first night was a Thursday at CC's in Moosic, and then we went to Ohio for 2 shows. I don't remember where they were, but we had 3 nights in a row, 1 in Moosic, PA, and then 2 in Ohio. And I was at my house getting ready to leave, and I had a stack of cash on my dresser. And I just got in the shower, and I got my stuff together, and I reached to grab the cash. And I stopped, and I thought, I don't need to take all this money with me. I don't remember how much was there. It was a couple $100. But I'm thinking, I don't need to take all this with me. I'm going to play tonight. We're playing the next 3 nights in a row. I don't really need to have a lot of cash on me. So I thought, here's a couple of bucks. I'm going to need to put a little gas in my car. Here's a little bit of money in case I want to grab a little bite to eat or something. So I took a couple of bucks with me and left the rest of the money on the dresser. And I put my money in my pocket. I drive up. We're in the dressing room getting ready before the show. We go out, while the opening band was playing, we're getting ready. And then we go out and we do the show. And we come back after the show and we realized someone went into our dressing room and stole all our money.
Oh.
Can you believe that? Someone went into the dressing room while the band was on stage and stole all our money. Now, I was like, oh my God. And I knew I only had $6 in my pocket. And when I reached into my pocket, there was a $1 bill in there.
Oh.
And I thought, they're probably in a hurry and they just got my 5 and they missed the 1. But I only had $6 in my pocket. I would have had like $200 or $300 or so in my pocket if I had grabbed all that cash off the dresser. And also, if that had been the 3rd night in a row as opposed to the 1st night, there would have been a lot of money in our dressing room because we would have had to pay for the last 2 shows would have been in our pockets in our dressing room. So that was a lesson learned. And another example of the same type of situation that happened, we were playing up in Boston, in Revere Beach, Boston. There was a place, I can't remember what it was called when we played there because the name had, it was called the Atlantic Lounge maybe or something like that. And I think it was called the Aquarium previously. And the neat thing about this place was they had mannequins and stuff stuck to the ceiling where it was like an inner tube, but like a girl's mannequin legs hanging down, like you were underneath the water, like you were in a swimming pool. That was the idea. They had like this, the decorations on the ceiling was to give the effect that you were inside a swimming pool. Anyway, I remember we were in the dressing room getting ready, and somebody came in and said, if you're not in the band, you have to get out of the dressing room. And our tour manager, Al, who was our right-hand man, he was in the dressing room, and he says, are you in the band? To Al. And Al said, I'm the stage manager. And the guy's like, well, if you're not in the band, you got to get out of the dressing room. And he got a little pissed, right? So Al walked out and proceeded to get drunk. And which ended up pissing off Kevin to no end. However, honest to God, Max, he got so drunk. By the time we came out to play, he was loaded and visibly loaded, right? And I'm like, oh my God, Al is so drunk. we didn't even start yet. But he was so pissed off that this guy threw him out of the dressing room. He just started drinking. So we go out and we're doing the show. We're in the middle of the show. And I'm watching the bouncers throw Al out of the club. So he's so drunk that he's getting thrown out, right? And we're on stage playing, and I'm watching them, taking him out. The bouncers are walking him out. So they make him leave, and I'm laughing. I'm thinking, where the fuck is he going? And then all of a sudden I look over and I can see through the neon window, the neon light through the window, I can see Al. He's peeking up above the windowsill, all drunk, looking in. Oh my God. So that was hilarious. And Kev was furious. And the next day, we were playing in Wilkes-Barre somewhere, and I realized someone stole my guitar tuner out of the dressing room that night.
How do people just like keep stealing all this stuff from backstage? Isn't there like security at any of these clubs?
But I found it interesting that this place made our stage manager get out of the dressing room because no one's supposed to be in here except the band. They made him leave. And then yet someone stole my guitar tuner out of the dressing room while we were playing on the same night.
Makes you wonder.
Makes you wonder. So yeah, true story.
Oh, you were telling me before about the fire extinguisher story.
The fire extinguisher, yeah. I wasn't in the band when that happened. Kevin and I had a disagreement about something, and I left the band for a little while and eventually came back. But while I was not with the band, they were playing at Scooch's in Roanoke, Virginia, and I'd played there many times, but they were playing there, and during the last song, Rock and Roll All Night, you know, people get a little out of hand sometimes. Some guy grabbed the fire extinguisher off the wall, and he came over and he blasted Paul Helms right in the face with and it was one of the powdered. It wasn't the water. Yeah. It was the powder fire extinguishers, and Paul Helms was playing ace at the time, and he blasted Paul right in the face with it. That Paul actually walked off the stage and went out back behind the club and puked in the parking lot. And then the cops were asking Paul, do you want to press charges against this guy? And Paul said no. But yep, somebody blasted Paul in the face with a fire extinguisher and he puked.
And that's one way to end the night.
Yeah. I don't know, you know, people do crazy things sometimes. I don't know what would possess someone to do something like that, but.
Can you tell me the survivor story?
Survivor story. Okay.
Like, how much are you allowed to? Is there anything you're not allowed to say?
No. I can say it whatever I want. There never was any restriction on what I was allowed to say, and now that Jimmy and Pete are both dead anyway, so it's not like you know there's any problem there.
Yeah.
But it started when I met this guy Bob Jones. I was playing a Cold Gin show in Allentown, and Bob Jones was a local promoter, and he asked me where I was from. I told him Schuylkill County. He said, so am I. Oh my God, where are you from? I'm from Maria. So we got to know each other, became friends, and he started helping us out, getting some shows and stuff. And then Bob would also call me whenever he needed extra stage hands, because he would sometimes book national bands. So he called me up the one day and he said, Eric, I need 5 guys to help roadie for Dio and Motorhead in New York. And I said, when is it? And he gave me the date, and I said, oh, I'm not playing that night. I said, I'll do it. And he said, you mean to tell me you're not too cool to move someone else's gear around? I said, nah, man, it's all good, rock and roll. So I said to him, you know what? Don't worry about it. I got this. I'll call 4 of my friends, and the 5 of us will come down and just let us know where and when, what time, and everything. So I got 4 of my buddies, and we go down and we roadie for Dio and Motorhead. But as it turned out, Ronnie James Dio was having some voice issues, and the next night they were playing in New York City, which is a more important market to him than New York, Pennsylvania. So he took the night off. So it ended up being just Motorhead. But then after that show, Bob would call me whenever he had a show. So I roadied, you know, over a couple of years there, I roadied for Warrant, Slaughter, FireHouse, LA Guns, Galactic Cowboys, King's X, Blue Oyster Cult, Joan Jett, and the one night it was Survivor in Hazleton. And I was always a big Survivor fan. I loved Jimmy's voice. I loved a lot of their songs. I had their, you know, all their albums, well, most of their albums I had at that point. And I go up there, and they told me to be there at a certain time. Let's just say it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We were supposed to be there. So we show up, and the band is already set up. And I was like, oh my God, are we late? And they said, nah, man, we got here early. We didn't want to wait for you guys. We just decided to start unloading. And, you know, so we set up, you know, just hang out. Okay. So we're hanging out. And I met the guys in the band, and the drummer, Pete Mandillo, was really cool. And I was telling him, you know, I'm in a Kiss tribute band, and he was a big Kiss fan. So we sat and talked to Kiss for a little bit. And then I said to him, did you guys do sound check yet? And he said, no. And I said, good, because I don't want to miss anything. I'm a big fan. You know, Jimmy's one of my favorite singers. And Pete said, well, you know, Jimmy's back at the hotel resting. He never does sound check with us. And I jokingly said, well, I'll do sound check with you. And he's like, really? I said, yeah. And he said, what songs do you know? I said, I know them all. And he starts laughing. He goes, no, seriously, what songs do you know? And I said, I know them all. I said, pick one. Really? Yeah. So he's okay, you're doing sound check with us. So when it was time for sound check, I got up and we did Burning Heart. from the Rocky IV movie.
Love it.
And I sang the tune. When the song was over, the band's high-fiving me, right? They're like, man, you nailed it, Do you know any other songs? Yeah, pick another one. So we did High on You for sound check.
Mm-hmm.
And then afterwards, they were like, wow, man, that was great. You got a great voice. Oh, thanks, and whatever. And they went back to the hotel. Then we took them over and dropped them off at the hotel. And then when it was time to go get them, we picked them up and brought them back. And now Jimmy's with them. And Jimmy comes up to me and he says, so you're the guy they were telling me about back at the hotel? And I said, yeah. He said, are you going to sing with me tonight? I said, sure. And here I was right down front for the whole show. And a couple times he handed the mic out to me to take a line, and he was laughing. Jimmy was such a cool guy. And then at the end of the show, they did like a little medley of cover songs, and he called me up on stage. Come on up, get up here, And I got up on stage, and we just jammed. And I was singing some harmonies with them, and he turned and looked at me like, wow, because I nailed the harmony and stuff. And then afterwards, he's like, man, he goes, I got a feeling I'm going to see you on MTV someday. Because I guess MTV was still sort of a thing in 1990. It was like 1997.
Yeah.
And it was September of 97, actually. And Pete Mendillo ended up giving me his phone number, and I gave him my number. And they're like, yeah, we'll keep in touch. So they leave. And Pete and I talked a couple of times over the next 2 years. And the one day I come home from work, and there's a message on my answering machine, because there was no cell phones at that point. Well, I guess people with money had cell phones at that time. Broke people didn't. And I came home and I pressed play on my answer machine, and it was like, hey, Eric, this is Pete. I'm in Las Vegas. We want you to come to Memphis and audition for the band. Give me a call. My room number is this. And if you don't get a hold of me, I'll call you tomorrow. So I called him immediately, and he had left the hotel. So now I had to wait. He flew back to Memphis, and the next day, I had to wait till the next day to talk to him. And he called me and he said, Jeff left the band. Jeff Adams was the bass player, and Jeff did a lot of the high harmonies. Jeff's a very good singer, and he did, most of the difficult harmony work. And Pete says to me, we know you sing and play guitar, but can you play bass? I said, yeah. He said, do you have a bass? I said, yeah. I lied. I didn't have a bass, but I figured I'd have one by the time I see you. So, I bought a bass. I bought a used bass off Bill Adams, a buddy of mine that I've played with in several different bands.
Yep.
And I started working on the tunes, and I had about maybe 2 weeks to learn. He gave me a list of like 13 songs, and he said, these are the 13 songs that we're going to play. And he said, here's another list of about 15 more songs, roughly, that you're going to have to know eventually if you join the band. So there was, in total, it was like 20, 25 songs maybe in total, something like that, but 13 to focus on. And yeah, it must have been at least 20 songs. It had to be like 25. I still have the list somewhere. But anyway, I went down there, and I knew in like 2 weeks I learned all these songs. And I go down to Memphis and to audition for the band. And we played, the first song we played was Burning Heart. And the drummer made a mistake, and Jimmy wasn't there. We stopped by Jimmy's apartment on the way to the audition, but Jimmy wasn't there the first night. I guess he just figured, you guys let me know if he's any good, Yeah. So when we walk into Jimmy's apartment, he's sitting Indian style on the floor of his apartment in jogging pants with his glasses on, playing Resident Evil.
Right, not what I expected.
Yeah, not what I expected either. But then there's the gold records all over the wall.
Yeah.
You got the Survivor, Vital Signs, and Survivor, When Seconds Count and all that stuff. But one of the records that was on the wall was ZZ Top Eliminator. And I said to Pete when we walked out, I said, Jimmy sang on ZZ Top. He said, yeah, that's him on Gimme All Your Lovin' in the background with the high harmonies.
Oh.
I never knew that was Jimmy. I'm like, wow, all right, that's cool. So he had the ZZ Top Eliminator gold album hanging on his wall. But anyway, we went over to practice and we started playing Burning Heart. And I think it was Pete made a mistake with something, or he dropped a stick, I forget, but we stopped. And the guitar player, Chris Adamson, looks at me and he goes, we need to get this boy a passport. I said, I already have one. And Chris goes, and we had played half a song. And Chris goes, I don't care what Jimmy says, you're in the band, dude. So we jammed on all the songs that night, the 13 songs. And then Pete said, by any chance, did you happen to work on any of the other songs? I said, I know them all. He said, you're kidding me. No. I said, I know every song on that list that you gave me. He said, wow, I can't believe you learned all those songs in 2 weeks. I said, yeah. And we jammed on a couple of different songs there. So then the second night, Jimmy came over. He didn't sing, but he watched us. So he came over and he watched us practice. And then afterward, he said to me, he said, how do you feel, Eric? Do you feel confident? You sure look confident. And I said, yeah, I feel confident. He said, good, I'm glad you came down. He said, tomorrow we're going to start working on the vocals. I said, all right, great. So then the third night, Jimmy sang with us. And it was the first time that we were all in the same room together playing. And it was great. It was, he was one of my vocal heroes, still is. And to have a chance to jam with the dude, and it's funny because you play in bands your whole life. You're practicing in a garage or a basement or whatever. And then you go to Memphis and jam with Survivor and you're in a garage, So it was actually the guitar player's parents' garage we were jamming in when I was playing with Survivor.
Yeah.
No different than being in any other band. I remember the one night Chris didn't come to practice because he was helping his girlfriend move into her new apartment. Same bullshit you deal with, in a regular band, you deal with in a band like that too. Some things don't change, I guess.
Musicians are people too.
Yeah. But the way it went down though is that was November. So it was November 16th, 17th, and 18th was, the audition turned into a 3-day practice. And I'll never forget the date because on the third night, when I met those guys in Hazleton 2 years earlier, I had a picture taken with Jimmy. And I had the picture blown up to an 8x10. And after we had practiced that third night where Jimmy sang with me, that's when I realized I was in the band. Because until Jimmy sang with me, I really didn't feel like I was in the band yet. Even though they're like, yeah, I'm glad you came down. You're in the band. No. After we actually jam, singing together, playing together, if Jimmy says you're in the band, that's when I can believe I'm actually in the band. And that's what happened on the third night. So he actually wrote, and I still have the 8x10 where he wrote to Eric, good to have you with us. And he wrote 11/18/99. And because that was the day, I guess you could say I officially joined the band.
Yeah.
So now it's November 18th. We just had our first actual full band practice. And we are playing on December 3rd in Switzerland.
Wow.
So we had to practice and get ready. So I came home, we did Thanksgiving, went back down, practiced again, came back up to sew a few things up before we left. And the day before I was leaving, see, I was driving, the plan was to drive to Memphis because it's like a 16 hour drive. The plan was to drive to Memphis the day before, check into the same hotel I always stay in. It was called the Memphis Inn. That way, when I got up in the morning, I'm already in town. They don't got to worry about me.
Yeah.
And we're flying to Switzerland. And we had one show in Switzerland and 10 shows in Germany over the next 14 days. And the day before I left, ran to Frackville with my list. I had a list of things I needed to take with me on the trip. I'm bringing shampoo with me. I'm bringing toothpaste, toothbrush. Had my list of everything I needed. And I went to the Rite Aid in Frackville to go get what I needed. And I come back and to my parents' house here, and my mom said, Eric, Pete called and said, don't leave until you call him. I thought, well, that's strange, right? So I called Pete. I said, Pete, what's going on? He said, where are you at? I said, I'm at my parents' house. He's like, all right, don't leave yet. I said, why? We might not be going. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Jimmy's getting sued by the former band members, and I don't know if we're going to be able to play these shows. Holy shit, right? Wow. Okay. So come to find out that there was a lawsuit and that the band didn't even know, nor did the promoters know, if they could legally do the shows, because with him being sued for using the band name, I don't know all the ins and outs of what all transpired, but it ended up where the shows were quote unquote postponed till March, is what I was told. Postponed till March. Okay, so now after that, I go back down to Memphis, and now we're rehearsing for the upcoming New Year's Eve show. We had a New Year's Eve show booked in at the Gold Strike Casino in Tunica, Mississippi. We're supposed to play New Year's Eve. Or I'm sorry, it wasn't. It was the 27th or 28th of December was to Tunica, Mississippi. New Year's Eve was a show in the Virgin Islands. And you know, we were supposed to do those shows. So we were practicing and working on all the songs, not just the 13 that we were going to play, but we were working on all the extra songs too. And Jimmy said to me, I can almost quote verbatim what he said to me. He said, Eric, you joined the band at a very turbulent time. He said, but don't worry about it. I've been through this before with those guys. It's not the first time they sued me. So we'll get through this. Don't worry about it. And he said, we'll work everything out. And we practiced several times off and on over the next couple of months. And then on April 1st, April Fool's Day, my buddy Tony Smith, who was the drummer in Cold Gin from Michigan, he calls me up and he said, Eric, I don't know how to tell you this, so I'm just going to read it to you, but you're not going to like it. He said, I'm on a website called melodicrock.com. And he proceeds to read, this is not an April Fool's joke. Jimmy Jamison has rejoined Survivor. So I didn't even get the courtesy of a phone call to say, hey man, the band's broken up. Jimmy's playing with Frankie Sullivan again. So, that's the end of that. I didn't even get the courtesy of that. I had to find out from a friend who read it on the internet. And then I called Pete. I'm like, Pete, what's going on? He's like, yeah, I just found out myself, and it looks like the band's broken up. And also, I forgot to mention, when we practiced right before we left for Switzerland, we're supposed to leave for Switzerland and Germany. At that last rehearsal before that, Jimmy said to me, he said, we're going to use these first shows as like a practice. And when we come back from Germany, we're going to start recording all the shows live. And we're going to put out a live album, and you're going to be on it. That's exactly what he said to me. Which, of course, it never happened. I mean, that's what went down. And, I only talked to Jimmy one time after that. I went to see Survivor was playing up at Montage in Wilkes-Barre, and I went to the show. And he seen me in the audience, and, so afterwards I went backstage with him, and we were talking. And he said, to me, we were sounding really good in that garage, and I said, yeah, we were, and he gave me his phone number and stuff in his email, and he said, keep in touch. And it wasn't too long after that my sister texted me. Michelle and I were in Ocean City, Maryland, in a hotel, when I got a text from my sister that said Jimmy Jamison died.
Yeah.
And I was stunned. Jimmy was only 63 years old when he died. Then, fast forward several years, Pete and I always kept in touch, the drummer. He and I kept in touch at least once or twice a year. We would talk. And he and I talked, I'm guessing it was probably about a year and a half ago. And we talked about the potential of doing a Jimmy Jamison tribute concert in Memphis. And he wanted to get all the guys who had played previously with Jimmy, like Jeff Adams, John Roth from Winger, Chris Adamson, Hal Butler, Paul Brown, all the guys that had played with him over the years, and bring, try and get them all to come back for this tribute concert. And I was going to sing. I was going to take the lead vocal part. And Pete's like, would you be interested? I said, sure, absolutely. And he said, well, let me talk to the other guys and see if they have any interest in actually doing it. Okay, that's cool. About 2 months later, I read on Facebook that Pete died, which was a complete shocker.
What did he pass from?
He died of a heart attack. He died at a place, I believe it was called Hadley's. They played a show in Memphis. He was in a couple of different bands he played with. And he was playing with a band in Memphis at Hadley's, I believe the place was called. And they, from what I understand, as soon as they were done playing, he got up and walked off the stage and started walking out into the bar, and he collapsed and died. And I was also told that there was a couple of girls there who were nurses who tried to help him, and they were unable to help him, from what I was told. I wasn't there,
Yeah.
but that's what I heard. And I was completely shocked. I was even more shocked to hear Pete died than I was when I heard Jimmy die. And I was so upset about it, I had to leave work, because I was at work when I saw it on the internet. And what I quickly did was I quickly went, because I saw it, and then I quickly went to someone's Facebook page that I trusted, that I thought would know.
Yeah.
And it confirmed it, that it was real. And I called my boss. I said, I gotta leave. I just found out one of my friends died. And I left. And that was about 1.5 years ago. In fact, Pete's birthday was just the other day. His birthday was the 27th. Today's what, 29th? His birthday was 2 days ago.
29th.
So that's the survivor story. And, how about it that Pete was going to try and organize something with me to do a tribute concert for Jimmy, and then he dies.
It's still crazy to think that it's literally the day before you're supposed to head down there.
The day before. I mean, literally, it was the evening before. I was getting my stuff, because tomorrow morning I'm going to get up and drive to Memphis, because the following morning we're flying to Switzerland. That's how close we were to doing the shows.
Yep.
And it never happened. And then, ironically, my band now, our new guitar player, because our guitar player Steve passed away in December unexpectedly. That was another shocker.
Yep.
But we brought in a friend of ours, Rusty Folk from Hybrid Ice, and Rusty and his band Hybrid Ice actually did some shows as Jimmy's backup band. So he actually played with Jimmy Jameson too, but he actually did shows. Which here's the crazy part. I was in Jimmy's band and we didn't play. Rusty did shows with Jimmy and wasn't actually technically in his band.
So who would have more, I guess, legitimacy on paper then? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I don't know. I mean,
Because, you were in there.
I was in the band, but he played shows with them. Yeah. Yeah. And he has a funny story about the first show when about eating at the breakfast buffet at the hotel, but I'll let him tell you that story. But yeah, and Rusty played with Boston too. I'm not sure how many. There was several different versions of Boston,
yeah.
But I know he played with those guys. A song that Rusty wrote ended up on their album, one of their albums.
I remember seeing the post about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a song called Magdalene, and it ended up on, I guess it was Boston's 4th album. I think it was the 4th one that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you could find both versions of that on YouTube too. You could find the Hybrid Ice version and the Boston version.
Do you remember any fun stories from? Because this is over 20 years now playing with Sapphire, right?
22.
Yeah. I mean, I know there's all the stories about interpersonal band relationships and stuff like that, but do you remember anything specifically pertaining to gigs?
To gigs? Oh boy. Is there anything really noteworthy? I don't know.
Yeah, I think live music is always just fun, just for how unpredictable things can be.
Yeah.
We were playing on Thursday, and we're playing Footloose, and I'm singing it and whatever. And all of a sudden, some lady, probably 85 or 90, walks up to the stage and says, "I want to get on stage and dance," to one of the girls, and says, "Okay, fine, you can come on stage." So she comes on stage, but then just a whole swarm of 70, 80 something wants to get up on stage and dance. And that's fine and whatever, but the issue is it's a stone stage and it's a few feet off the ground, and there's all these
there's cables and equipment all over the place. Yeah,
and there's all these older people just dancing around on the stage right by the edge. It's if you just move over a foot or two the other direction, that'll be fun. But they're literally doing all these spins and whatever moves. That how are they doing this? Literally just inches from the edge. It's I always get worried about that sort of thing. Obviously, it's not my band, so I don't need to worry about the insurance. But yeah. I worry about things like that.
Well, I just thought of something. So I thought of a funny story with Sapphire. We were playing one night up at the Road's End in Hazleton, and we had floor monitors at that time. And some girl who was drunk ends up spilling her beer, and it goes right into the horn. It went right into the horn of the speaker. So I stopped playing. I immediately grabbed the monitor and I flipped it over, so hoping that all the beer would come back out before it destroyed anything. and Michelle went off on this girl. All right, so Michelle might be tiny and all that, but you don't want to mess with her, right?
I can't imagine her getting angry.
Stick around. So, so Michelle goes off on this girl, right? And the whole band saw Michelle go off on this girl. A few months later or whatever, we're playing at Amigos in Minersville, and we have our floor wedges still on the floor. And we were doing a song that she didn't sing in, or didn't sing much in. And she walked off the stage and went kind of behind. There was a wall. There was like a wall behind the band that you could go behind. So she walked around and went behind that wall. And we're playing, and some girl drunk comes up and trips over our monitor and falls onto the stage. And everybody in the band starts frantically looking around. Where's Michelle? Oh my God, where's she at? Oh my God, did she see that? She's gonna kill this girl. But luckily, luckily Michelle didn't see it, and we got her off the stage fast enough before Michelle was able to go off on her too. Yeah, you don't want to mess with that little Filipino temper.
So I was interviewing Mark Mayhall a few weeks ago, and we were talking about the story since he was there that night at Penn's Peak when I ended up filling in with you guys.
Yes.
So the thing that I still find myself wondering, there was like how many different musicians in the audience that night, but when, you know, Steve fell and they, you know, took him backstage and everything, and you come to the side of the stage, point at me, say, Max, I need you.
Yeah.
Why'd you pick me out of everyone there?
I figured you knew the songs.
I mean, fortunately, I did.
Yeah, so that story briefly is that our guitar player Steve tripped on stage at Penn's Peak, and he fell and broke his arm. And if I'm not mistaken, we were playing the second song.
Yep, it was the second
song.
song.
I mean, we just started playing. And I remember the song, it was Roll with the Changes by REO Speedwagon was the song that we were playing. And I remember watching him, I saw him go over, like while I was singing, I saw him go over to his amp. And I thought, what's he doing? He kind of stopped playing. He looked like he was trying to tune his guitar. I'm thinking, oh, what the heck happened to him? I didn't see it. I didn't see him fall.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck is going on over there? So when it came time for the lead, I figured he was going to be there. And right when that first bend in the key of C, where he takes that first bend in the song for the solo, it wasn't there. And I looked over, like then I knew something was up. So I started just kind of playing. I knew it was in C. I just kind of started bending some notes and kind of just try to throw a little something in there. I didn't really know how to play the lead.
You were trying to roll with the changes.
I was trying to roll with the changes. So hey, that was a good one. And that's when I knew something was wrong, but I didn't realize how wrong it was.
Yeah. Until,
you know, when we finished the song and he went over and sat down. And that's when I knew something was wrong. And I walked over and I'm like, Steve, what's wrong? And he's like not even answering me. Like he's just kind of staring straight ahead. I'm like, what the hell happened? And then somebody said, he fell. And like, oh my God.
Because he tripped over the pedal board, right?
Yeah, he tripped over his own equipment, actually. From what I understand, he was backing up and his heel hit he had a whole bunch of pedals on the floor and he tripped over it and he put his arm down. He broke his arm. He cracked the headstock on his guitar too, but he fixed that. Steve could fix anything. He fixed the headstock on the guitar, but he did break his arm. And Leon Karpovich, my buddy, was there with us that night. And Leon took my car and drove him to the hospital while we were still playing with you.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you jumping in and helping us out.
But I remember like jumping up there because like obviously every guitar player's rig is different. So I'm looking at all this and like, I don't know what any of these buttons do. I'm pressing buttons hoping, wait, is this it? No. Because it's basically like trying to man an alien spaceship or something.
Yeah.
And like he had a really awesome setup with his gear and everything, but
he always did, yeah.
But here's the thing: if you don't know how it works,
you're in trouble. I wouldn't have known how it works either. I never played through his gear. His stuff always sounded great though. But, he broke his arm, and that was a gig nightmare.
Yeah.
But we've been through a lot of changes, and the original Sapphire. You know, Steve was a band that Steve and Paul and Michelle put together in high school back in the 80s. And the drummer was Todd Herb, the bass player was Barry Ratecki, and the other guitar player was Matt Mushron. And out of the 6 people who were the original members of Sapphire back in the 80s, as we sit here today, 2024, half of them are dead. Barry passed away a number of years ago, and then Matt passed away maybe 4 or 5 years ago, something like that, and then Steve in December, and Steve had just turned 60 in November, and he died like 3 weeks later. So, three of the original members of Sapphire from the 80s are all dead, and Steve was the oldest, who had just turned 60. That's pretty frightening.
But I think that's why it's important that you guys carry on and like still honor him and, you know, have the tributes to him and everything.
Yeah, we also have a tribute page on our Facebook, or not our Facebook, on our website. If you go on our website, there's two cool things on our website. One is the Steve Zaleski tribute page where we could post, different pictures and stuff about Steve. And then we also have another thing that I'd been wanting to do for a while. It's called Sapphire Around the World, and it's pictures of people who are fans of the band wearing Sapphire t-shirts all over the world. And it started with there's a guy named Adam Smith from England who has some family in Pine Grove, and he's been here several times, and he likes our band, and he would come see us. Mm-hmm. And he had asked me about a t-shirt one night. I said, Adam, here's a t-shirt. You don't got to pay me for it, but just do me a favor. I said, take a picture over in England somewhere, with a recognizable place. Take a picture with your Sapphire shirt. And he sends us a picture of him standing with Big Ben in the background. Yeah. And he's pulling his jacket open, showing his Sapphire t-shirt. And when I got that picture, I'm like, you know what? This is cool. Yeah. This is really cool. We gotta do this with everybody. So I had said a while back about starting this Around the World tab on our website, and Jimmy, our drummer, who's running our website now, he's on top of it pretty good, and he has that. There's pictures of people in Bahamas and Niagara Falls and Roswell, New Mexico, and Colorado.
I'm gonna need to get a T-shirt off you guys, because I bought a T-shirt a few years ago for a girlfriend I had, but I don't know whatever happened to that, so I need to get a T-shirt, because I was in Machu Picchu earlier this year.
Oh, it would have been great.
And I had my, I was wearing my gas station disco, Rob Hampton's old band. Yeah. I had that shirt, so if I knew.
Yes.
But I like traveling, so I'm gonna have to get a shirt.
Yes, I'll have to get you one. I don't have any here. What size do you wear?
Like medium or large.
Medium or large. Okay. I'll see if I can grab one tonight at the show. We're playing at a campground tonight. We've never played there before. It's called Little Mexico Campground, or
Little Mexico?
Something like that.
Interesting.
Little Mexico, is it called? Or
I love the creative names that venues always have and whatever. I was watching some movie. I think it was. You ever see The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai from the 80s?
I did. I don't remember anything about it, but I know I saw it back in the 80s.
Well, Buckaroo and his band or whatever, they're playing in one of the first shots in the movie at a club called Artie's Artery.
Yeah, I remember the movie. I remember the movie existing. Yeah, but I don't remember anything about it. Back then, we watching movies was something that we did a lot of too. Yeah, because at the Schuylkill Mall here, there was a store called Farmore, and it was like a small Walmart, like Walmart before there was Walmart, because it had everything. And there was they had a video section in Farmore, and they had a really good horror video section. And Leon and I, we were big horror freaks, and they had where you can rent 3 movies for 2 nights for $2. So almost every weekend, Leon and I would go up there and rent 3 movies, and it was usually horror, unless there was something we wanted to see other than the horror, but we saw them all. And I mean, we literally saw every horror movie you could possibly imagine up to that point. We watched movies like Frankenhooker, Killer Nerd. I mean, crazy. We didn't start and stop at Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, we took it to extremes. We watched them all.
I'm gonna have to look into those.
Yes, yes, and sometimes there's movies that I forgot I even seen, because we saw so many of them. I just saw one recently, a movie called Night of the Demons, and I'm like, I think I might have seen that movie, and here I watched the movie, and it kind of seemed familiar. And then when it got to the end, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I remember seeing it. I remember the ending. I remembered it exactly. But that was a movie that I had seen and, just forgot about because we saw so many of them. But how could you forget titles like Frankenhooker and Killer Nerd? Night of the Demons doesn't quite stick in your brain as much as Killer Nerd would.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean those movies were any good. Oh,
I don't think you watch them because they're good, though.
I know, but I got to tell you. So, this topic we're talking about, we can ties into something we talked about earlier.
All right.
The very first movie that I got involved with a song of mine, still isn't out yet. It's the movie Tales from the Dead Zone, written and directed by Barry J. Gillis, who's from Canada, and he has Bret the Hitman Hart and Corey Feldman are both in this movie. Now, the movie's filmed, they're in post-production, they're putting it together, but Barry does a lot of that work himself, and he also works a day job. So he doesn't have all the time in the world to just work on it and finish it. So it's taking longer to get it done than he would like it to, but it will be coming out eventually. Anyway, when Barry first said he wanted to use my song Shot Down in the movie, I really didn't know much about Barry or Exosphere Motion Pictures, so I looked into it. I Googled it, looked like everyone else would, and I go on Facebook and I put Barry's name, and I see a picture of Barry at a Kiss concert, and I went, oh, so that's why he digs my music, right? So it made sense. And anyway, after looking into him and finding out what the stuff he had done over the years, the first movie he was involved with was a movie called Things back in the 80s. And he has been involved in many different movies, but this movie, Tales from a Dead Zone, I think is the fifth one, if I'm not mistaken, the fifth or sixth movie that he's written and directed. But the first one was back in 1988, 89. He did this movie Things. So I thought, well, I gotta go back and check out all his movies now, right? I mean, if he's gonna be using my song in his new movie, I want to see what he's done up to this point. So I went and I got a copy of Things, and when I saw the cover, it looked familiar. I looked at the cover and I went, I think I've seen this cover before. And I watched the movie and I went, oh my God, I saw this movie before. It was one of the movies that Leon and I watched out because my parents' garage out here was great back in the 80s. They had a pool table, we had a stereo system out there, a television, a dartboard, we had sofas and stuff. The TV with the VCR, it was great. And that's where we would hang out. We'd go rehearse in Frackville at my dad's warehouse, and then we'd come over here and shoot pool and watch horror movies.
Yeah.
And that's what we did in the 80s. And when I watched Things, I realized, oh my God, I saw this movie before.
It all comes back around.
Yeah. And if you go on, you can find on YouTube where someone did a thing where they ranked the worst movies ever made, and Things was number one.
It got to be number one or something.
Yeah, that's it, man. Yeah, so he did Things, and then the second movie he did was called Wicked World, which he named after, he's a big Black Sabbath fan, he named it after the Black Sabbath. And then he did The Killing Games, I think it was called, and then he did a movie called House of Many Sorrows, and then now this one, Tales from it. So this is the fifth movie that he has written and directed.
Nice.
Yeah, and our song Shot Down is going to be in it. So I'm looking forward to it. But it was, from getting involved with Barry with this movie, even though it's not even out yet, was how I got kind of connected with other people, where I got an email the one day from a guy named Joseph Galai from Hungary, asking me, do I want to be involved? Do I want to become a producer of a movie called a movie called I Hear the Trees Whispering. I looked at he sent me a link, and I looked at all the information about the movie, and it all looked great, Oh, this looks really cool. It looks really professional. And the movie was pretty much already filmed at that point. He was just looking for more investors to get the movie out. But at the very end, at the bottom, it said, do not contact us and ask us if we need actors or music for our film. And I thought, well, I didn't contact you, you contacted me. Yeah. So fair is fair, right? So I respond to his email and I said, thanks for sending this, but I'm really not a movie producer. The only reason why I'm listed as a producer with Tales from the Dead Zone is because that the director is going to use one of my songs. And if you'd like to use any of my music in your film, let me know. And if not, best of luck with your film. And I attached, I think it was 4 songs I attached to I attached 4 songs to the bottom of the email. And then I get an email back from him saying, I want to use 2 of these songs, send me some more.
Huh.
Okay, so I sent him some more, and he ended up using 3 songs in that movie, but he never did use either of the 2 songs he initially wanted to use for that movie. But that was good, because he was like, no, I want to use these 3 songs in this movie, but I'm going to use this one in the next one, and I'm going to use this one in the next one. So he's actually cranked out, him and his partner, Gergo Elikis, I believe his name is. I can't know if I'm pronouncing their names right because they're from Hungary, but they work together, and these 2 guys are really cranking out. They're cranking out some movies fast, man. They're making them fast. They're cranking them out, and they're good. You know, they're these independent films. You know, some of them are pretty good. And so he used 3 songs in I Hear the Trees Whispering. The next movie he put out was Project Skyquake. He used a song of ours called Just Kiss Me. It was on our first album, and he actually put a photo of the band in the movie. So he messages me one day, can you send me a picture of your band? I'm like, yeah, okay. So I send him a picture, an 8x10 of the band at that time. Yeah. You know, so I'm 21 years old in this picture. And in the movie, the 2 main girls that are in the movie, they're in this apartment packing to go on a trip. And my song is playing while they're packing and they're talking. And the girl who's not packing is like looking, and here she has like these pictures and posters of different bands or movies or whatever. And she goes, oh, I could see, you know, she says, oh, State of Shock, nice. I could see your collection is getting, she said, I'm not shocked to see your collection's getting larger or something like that. But you see for a couple seconds, you see the picture of the band.
That's awesome.
And also, as a side note, the picture's autographed. Now, we didn't sign the picture. When Joseph Galai, when he asked me for a picture of the band, he didn't say, can you send me an autographed picture of the band? So I just sent the picture, but in the movie it's autographed. So they forged our autographs. So when you see the movie and you see the autographed 8x10, the 8x10's real, the autographs are not.
Wow.
And then he made another movie called Aftermath, and he used the song Water Hotter that I wrote in that movie. That was on our first record. And then he just recently put out a movie called A Stranger in the Woods. And 4 of our songs, they're very small pieces of it, just pieces of 4 songs of ours in A Stranger in the Woods. And he's also working on another movie now called The Black-Eyed Children, which I'm pretty excited about, because the story of the Black-Eyed Children, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a pretty cool, like a urban legend. And but it's a cool background story, and I think that's going to be a pretty creepy movie, and he's going to use one of our songs in that one too.
Awesome.
So you know, just getting involved with that one guy put our music into 5 movies, and it came from someone who said, do not ask me if I need music for my movie, and it ended up where, you know, here we are. And you know, one thing leading to another. The one day I get a message from a guy that I didn't know. He got my info from one of the other guys that I'm involved with, and he messages me and says, do you want to become a producer? I get producer requests all the time. People are looking for money. See, like, producer in music and producer in movies is 2 different things. Producer in music, as you know, is basically like what a director does in a movie. But producer in movies is the money. It's basically what the record company does in music, or did do when they existed. But
do you have anything else you want to promote before we wrap things up?
We talked about a lot of stuff.
I'd say so. Listen, I appreciate you taking the time.
You bet.
You know, tell your stories. I think it'll make for a good episode.
I think so. I've never listened to a podcast or watched a podcast or anything, so I don't even know anything about it.
I think it's one of those things that, like, if you find one you really like, you just go all in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Thank you again.
You bet, man. Anytime. Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Gig Nightmares. Gig Nightmares is an independently produced podcast podcast made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you enjoyed this week's episode, we would appreciate if you left a rating and a review for us. Gig Nightmares.